First, let me tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm teaching you this today. I'm Carolyn V. Hamilton, and I'm a success coach for memoir writers. My own memoir, which by the way took me 38 years to write, is called Coming to Las Vegas, a true tale of sex, drugs, and Sin City in the 70s. I'm also the author of this little blue book, Power Editing for Memoir Writers. What I do is help aspiring memoir writers share their stories of adventure, adversity, personal challenges, trauma, and redemption. And I have a private coaching program called Memoir to Legacy. Here's what I'm going to share with you during this presentation. First, we're going to talk about the difference between memoir and autobiography. It's important that you're clear about this because your potential reader wants to know this right up front. We're going to talk about how to get organized and to get started because I know a lot of aspiring memoir writers struggle with this. We're going to talk about the 5 important parts of a successful memoir and why you need them. Plus, I'm going to talk about the single most important part of every successful memoir. When you're organized and you have a roadmap, it's so much easier to write your memoir. If you apply what I'm going to teach you in the next 40 minutes, you'll be miles ahead of other memoir writers because they'll still be floundering with no direction, no action steps, and no idea of where they're going. Before we get going, I do have a little disclaimer. I want to reassure you right now that I'm not here today to sell you anything. I just want to share tips and information with you that'll give you the confidence and the information to go forward and write your memoir easily and fast. These are the same things I've used to help other aspiring memoir writers find direction and complete their memoirs. When you have what I'm going to show you today, you'll find there's no need to be overwhelmed by your memoir project, to wonder if you're on the right track, or to feel alone and struggle, wondering what on earth do I do next? This workshop is for you if you're in overwhelm with no clue where to start, you're worried that you can't write, you've struggled with getting organized and would like to have a roadmap to success, or if you're worried about the time it'll take to write your story. The steps I'm going to teach you today, I developed specifically for memoir writers like you. And once you implement what you're going to hear today, you'll have the confidence to begin writing with ease, and you'll no longer worry about how to write effectively, and you'll have a strong plan for how to structure your story. Now, I have to say that this is not for you if you're angry and you want to write a memoir out of revenge. I know a woman who lived in New York and had all kinds of publishing connections and no one would touch her story. She had a 15-year relationship with a major television star, but they told her she was just too angry in her writing and the relationship couldn't have been all that bad if she hung around for 15 years. This is also not for you if you want to write a book and get rich quick. Unless you're famous in your field or you had a relationship with a famous movie star or politician, this is simply not likely to happen. And this is definitely not for you if you think this is easy, because it's not. You're going to have to do some hard work, but you'll be able to do it confidently, knowing you're heading in the right direction. And this is not for you if you have no basic internet skills, like you don't know how to use Microsoft Word or how to use Google search to gather information. These are really basic key skills that every successful writer today just has to have. And this is definitely not for you if you're afraid to use the internet for fear that someone will steal my story. Believe it or not, I actually once had a guy years ago tell me he couldn't email me his first 3 chapters for that reason. And guess what? Today, he's still not finished writing his memoir. Let me tell you a little bit about why it took me 38 years to write my memoir, Coming to Las Vegas. First, I was afraid of being sued by some of the people I wrote about. though after 38 years, a lot of them were dead, and nobody can sue you on behalf of the dead person. I also didn't have a clue how to begin to write a book, and life got in the way. There were a couple of marriages, a couple of divorces, some exciting new jobs, a major surgery, a couple of moves, death in the family. You get the picture. So I know exactly how a lot of you feel about finding the time to write and stay committed to the process. But along the way, here's what I did. I read just about every book on writing I could find. I joined writers groups, and I bought expensive tickets to writers conferences. And the result? I got completely bogged down by overwhelm and threw everything back in the proverbial drawer for another day. All of this took time, a lot of time, and a lot of money. But I have to tell you, lots of people helped me along the way, which is why I want to pay it forward now. I want to save you all the time and money I spent to learn what I'm going to share with you today. So let's dive in and get started. I said I'd talk first about the difference between a memoir and an autobiography. According to Writer's Digest, an autobiography focuses on the chronology of the writer's entire life, while a memoir covers one specific aspect of the writer's life. For example, because Coming to Las Vegas covers just a 3-year period in my life, it focuses on my move from LA to Vegas to join a circus and then open the original MGM as a cocktail waitress. It qualifies in the category of memoir. My client, Cork Proctor, wrote about his entire life as an entertainer, beginning with his childhood growing up in Wisconsin and Las Vegas. So his book, My Mind is an Open Mouth, is technically an autobiography. It covers about 6 decades of time. Whether you choose to write a memoir or a complete autobiography of your life, the same rules of strong storytelling apply. Your memoir is going to contain a lot of the same elements you'd use if you were writing a novel. Here are the 5 important parts of any successful book, and in a minute I'm going to break down more details for each one. First of all, the story part of your memoir. Here I'm talking about how your story is structured, the way all of us are accustomed to following a story. The descriptions in your memoir. How you describe something is going to impact how your reader imagines it or sees it in her mind's eye. The dialogue in your memoir. We want to know who said what to whom. It's a basic component to telling a compelling story. The scenes in your story. Scenes help us follow the path through the story. So I'm going to show you in a minute how to structure scenes like you'd see if you were watching a movie or a series on television. And then I'm going to tell you the single most important thing you must have in your memoir. Let's get started then with the story part of your story and why you need it. Stories are often referred to as being told in 3 acts or 3 parts. This is an ancient storytelling formula that readers are comfortable with. This storytelling formula dates way back to the times of Greek tragedies and comedies. You may hear other writers refer to the story arc. Basically, this is the same thing. Just like doctors and mechanics, we writers love our own special vocabulary. Now, broken down, here's a rough idea of story acts or how a story arc unfolds. Part 1 or Act 1, whatever you want to call it, is the beginning of the book. This is where something happens that creates a story. This something happening is called the inciting incident. This means that whatever happens in the beginning of your story is going to cause all the actions and feelings and scenes that follow. This kind of action, something you as the main character must immediately react to. It'll cause all actions and feelings and scenes that follow. Ideally, this inciting incident will change the life of your character, in this case you, forever after. What's the inciting incident in your memoir? What happened that triggered your story? Does it begin on the first page so the reader's immediately drawn in? Whatever happened was most likely something you had to immediately react to. And this inciting incident hooks your reader into your story. Your reader's already wondering, who is this person? And why is she in this situation? How did this happen? And oh my God, what's she going to do now? Your reader keeps reading because she wants to know more about you and the situation you've introduced. By the way, I'm referring to your reader as she because statistics show that most readers are female. And in this part, your inciting incident, you're also going to establish who you are and what your story's about. Your reader will understand your relationships and the world you live in. Ideally, your reader will also understand the values that are at stake for you. In part 2 or act 2, you'll get into a culminating crisis or a confrontation. There'll most likely be a series of stumbling blocks, and it'll probably feel a lot like 3 steps forward and 2 steps backwards. The conflict resulting from the inciting incident is building here. You might have experienced different ways of solving your challenge, none of which worked. This can be your blackest moment, the moment when it seems like all hope is lost. Your reader's compelled to keep reading to answer the mind's question. Oh my God, what's going to happen now? How is she going to handle this? Part 3, Act 3 presents the resolution. And this usually happens in a few dramatic scenes, or it could be just one climactic scene. But all conflicts will be resolved here. All the questions in the story will be answered, and your reader will be left with a satisfied feeling. The idea here is that every great story has a clear beginning, middle, and end, those 3 parts. Now, I want to say that they'll not necessarily be 3 equal parts. The beginning, for example, might be much longer than the middle or the end, or the middle may be longer, depending on the nature of the conflict and the challenges that you're facing in your story. So I want you to ask yourself, does your memoir have a clear story structure? Can you define the beginning, the middle, and the end? The more time you spend in the beginning thinking about this, the easier it's going to be. Easier to structure the scenes that you're going to need to show how your story progresses. And in the end, it'll be much easier for you to write the book. I want to share this little story concept with you that I learned a few years back when I was playing with improv comedy. And oh my gosh, was that fun. But this is what I learned about one of the improv storylines. Once upon a time, until one day, and because of that, and because of that, and because of that, until one day, and ever since then. So basically, once upon a time would be your setup. Letting your reader know the date or year your memoir begins, where you were living, how old you were, etc. Until one day really refers to your inciting incident. Remember, this is the thing that happened that set you off on your challenge. And because of that, something that happened, and because of that, something else that happened, and because of that, these are the part 2 or act 2 scenes of your story, where one challenge leads to another and so on. Until one day would be your part 3, act 3 climactic ending scenes. And ever since then would be the final closing to your story. This could actually be included in your story, or maybe you would add it as an epilogue chapter. Let's move to the descriptions in your memoir and why we need descriptions. Descriptions help your reader more easily visualize people, places, and things. They help identify actions and situations and clarify time, place, and setting. Your descriptions are what help your reader visualize in her mind's eye the setting or the scene. Descriptions tied to emotions, telling us how you feel about something, are the most powerful. We're going to talk a little more about this again later. Best-selling memoir author Andrea Watkins does this beautifully in a few early paragraphs like this one in Not Without My Father. She's getting ready to walk the 444-mile Natchez Trace. Green eyes blurred with every heartbeat as I trudged to my first marker. 444 miles was a long way to walk. Doubt gripped my insides, choked my rib cage, rebelled against air, but when I turned, I struck my usual pose, mouth yawning open in a round O, black pants, gray shirt, eyes wide, my toddler smile. Whew, that's pretty clear. Ask yourself, does the description remind you of something else, something personal? You want to write details that evoke emotion and present vivid imagery. Because the purpose of describing something is to set the scene or to illustrate an action. It has to support the story. Look at your descriptive words to see if there's any way you can strengthen them by being more specific. For instance, an animal could be a cat, or it could be an ocelot, a type of cat. If we just say cat, my house cat's going to be different in my mind's eye than the house cat you'll envision. A dress could be a house dress, which could be a shirtwaist, a common type of dress in the 50s and 60s. A purse could be a handbag or a Gucci bag. If it's a Gucci bag, this is going to tell you a lot about the person, the woman carrying it. A tree could be tall. It could be a cypress tree, tall and narrow, or it could be a fat oak tree, for instance. A building could be old and rococo, or it could be a new style building. You might mention a contemporary architect's name to help your reader visualize that. Descriptions can be a little longer in scenes that are more reflective or a backstory. In action scenes, you want to keep your descriptions as short and clear as possible. You want to keep the action moving, not slow the pacing with a lengthy description of the parts of the green car that went end over end when it hit a high embankment in the middle of the accident scene. Now I want to address the dialogue part of your memoir and why you need dialogue. I was once asked to edit a book where the author had not written any dialogue at all. She just wasn't comfortable writing it. So I understand this can be a challenge, but it's absolutely necessary and readers expect it. The dialogue, what people actually say to each other, brings us into the scene in a personal way. It makes us connect more readily with the people in the scene. And it breaks up paragraphs so that the reader's eye can move more comfortably over the page. That's a psychological part of the reading process that we're all subconsciously familiar with. Dialogue can do so many things that make your story powerful. It can show quirks of the speaking character. For example, if you have a young girl who has the habit of saying like or maybe somebody who overuses the word awesome. I have a friend who has a habit of beginning a lot of his sentences with, to be honest. Dialogue can comment on or establish the setting. Here's an example of that. I'm going to read this. You'd love Peru, he said. It's a beautiful, friendly country full of incredible history, and there's Machu Picchu. Dialogue can build conflict by providing drama. By the way, these examples are from the book Dare to Survive. It's fiction based on a true story because my client at the last minute was afraid to publish it as a memoir. Catherine, how can you agree to carry luggage for somebody without knowing what's inside it? Marge demanded. I'm coming right over. We're going to open those suitcases. That dialogue also foreshadows events to come. Conversation can also give information or explain something. I'll read another example. Vargas said, the airline says Domingo has canceled his ticket, and we have 15 days to catch this guy. Dialogue can also show emotion, as in this line, "The food is horrible and I'm too upset to eat." It can also move the story forward, as in this example. "I've been trying for days to get someone to call Cesar for me," she said. "I want to retain him as my lawyer." Read the dialogue you've written in your memoir and ask yourself, does what you or the other person say make a point? Does the person speak simply? Most of us don't speak in complete sentences. How much emotion is in the words? Be careful with people who speak with dialects, accents, or unusual speech mannerisms. You want to keep these examples to a minimum because this can be hard to read and it can also slow the pacing, which could cause your reader to lose interest. I do want to add something here, and that's the use of contractions. Most of us don't take the time to say, "I cannot promise to do it because I do not know if I am going there tomorrow." We're much more likely to say, "I can't promise to do it because I don't know if I'm going to go there tomorrow." How does your dialogue flow? And what does that mean? The ease that sounds natural to the reader, as if he were reading a scene on television, watching a scene on television. And conversations flow better when you use those contractions. A good way to test for the feel of dialogue that's natural and flows well is to read it out loud. If you've written a long sentence for someone that you can't say out loud without taking a breath in the middle, that sentence is too long. Dialogue is most effective when it's simple and emotionally charged. Here's an example from Coming to Las Vegas, my memoir. The setting's a Denny's, and there are 3 people present, and Neil is a government official. "You're practicing age discrimination," I rage. "I suppose," Neil says, "but I can't fix it." He signals the waitress for more coffee. "They can't do that. There's a law against age discrimination. We'll sue the federal government." My point again here is short words, short sentences, lots of contractions. You can learn more about dialogue if you study movie scripts. Look especially at action scenes that have dialogue. Notice how few words are in each character's part. Notice the back and forth exchange of conversation. When I think of action scenes like that, I'm always reminded of the movie Lethal Weapon, where Mel Gibson and his partner speak to each other fast while dodging bullets and cars at the same time. Look at tense emotional scenes. Notice what words are used to convey meaning. Notice how the characters express their emotions in words. And by the way, lots of memoirs have been made into movies, like The Glass Castle and A Long Way Home, which was made into the movie Lion, and Angela's Ashes and Eat, Pray, Love. You can download the complete scripts of a lot of popular movies at www.simplyscripts.com. That's all one word, lowercase, Simply Scripts. But be careful, because you could get hooked like I did on reading scripts of your favorite movies. Sometimes I'll even download a script because the sound in the movie was too loud or people spoke so softly and fast, I didn't get what happened, and I want to see what I missed. Now I want to talk to you about the scenes in your story and why you need them. As readers, we're accustomed to a series of scenes that move the story forward. Scenes show what happened rather than you telling what happened. And by the way, I'll talk more about the concept of show don't tell in just a minute. When you master how to write a scene, it's easy to write a lot more. And the next thing you know, you have a complete book. Now, here's one important concept about scenes that I have to share with you. The function of a scene is to bring change, small or large, into the life of the character through an event. Now, when I say event, I don't necessarily mean major event like a robbery or a death or a job firing or something like that. The event in a scene could be as simple as you look out the kitchen window at your neighbor's yard, you have an epiphany, and you make a decision to divorce your spouse. That decision will bring change into your life. Another key ingredient in a scene is conflict. Does your scene contain conflict? Conflict in a scene will present a cause and effect dynamic that can take you from one emotion to another. Does your first and most important scene, your exciting incident, contain conflict? Remember, this is the setup for your entire story, the incident that introduces you and at least hints at conflict to come. This event must raise questions. Otherwise, your memoir has no story goal and your reader has no reason to keep reading. From this beginning on, you want to show scenes of events and your choices that show how the story moves forward. Ask yourself these important questions about each scene in your manuscript. Does your reader know immediately where and when this scene takes place? What's at stake in this scene? What does this scene reveal? Is this scene an interesting event? Does the scene end hinting at something that will make the reader want to continue reading? Maybe a large or a small cliffhanger? What has changed for you as the main character from the beginning of the scene to the end of the scene? And if you eliminated this scene, would it hurt the story? This last question helps you to know how important this scene is to the story, how it fits into the bigger picture. Now, I want to talk here about this concept of show, don't tell. If you've been around any other writers, you've probably heard that bit of writing advice already. So what does this mean? Show, don't tell. Here's an example. Instead of saying your father was abusive, write a scene describing a time when he exhibited abusive behavior towards you or another family member. Who was there? What did your father do or say? How did you or the others who were present react? What did they do? How did you feel? What judgment or decision did you make because of your father's action? And then what happened? This is the power of scenes, to show people's behaviors and other people's reactions, illustrating some person's trait, belief system, or decision. Now, here's the most important part of a successful memoir: emotion. You want to talk about how you felt when you anticipated something, when you feared something, when someone said or did something to you, when you made an important decision, when you lost something, when you achieved something. So today we've covered these 5 important parts of your memoir, and we've talked about why you need them. I've talked about the 3-act story concept, beginning with the inciting incident, the descriptions, the dialogue, the scenes, and most importantly, the emotion in your story. I've just shown you the system I've personally used to write my own memoir and to coach others with their memoir projects. You've listened to how it works and how I and other authors have done it, so you know what I'm saying can help you. To continue, you have some choices. You can struggle and do it yourself, or if you'd like to fast track, if you'd like me to personally help you implement everything we've covered today, I'd be excited to do that. That's why I've created Memoir to Legacy, a 150-day master mentorship program that'll take your memoir from idea to professional manuscript ready to publish. In this program, you'll discover leading-edge strategies to organize your memoir idea. You would learn new ways to leverage your time, and you'd experience how to get your book written so others can gain and learn from your experience. Here are some ways that you can connect with me. There's a complete description of the program, Memoir to Legacy, on my website, carolynvhamilton.com. And that's Carolyn V. Hamilton, all one word. If you have more specific questions, just ask me here at this email, carolyn@carolynvhamilton.com. You can also use that email for other customer support if you want. If you go here to book a discovery call with me, I can answer your questions directly, and we can talk about your specific memoir project, and we can see if Memoir to Legacy is for you. That website is carolynvhamilton.acuityscheduling.com. I'm going to pause for a minute here so you can copy some of this information, or maybe just take a screenshot of this, and I'm going to take a sip of water. So here's the question I want to ask you. What if you had the power to write a memoir that would significantly impact one other person's life? I've just shown you an important part of the system I personally use to complete my memoir and that I use to help my clients. If you're an aspiring memoir writer who really can help people by sharing your story, you might be wondering how you can apply all these tactics yourself. I've set aside some time to talk to you personally about how you can take your memoir to the next level, if you're willing. This is completely free of charge. Here's what would happen on this call. We would discuss your project in detail and determine what your best next steps will be. You'll discover a method to complete your memoir and have it ready to be published in the next 5 months. And together we'll identify what's keeping you right now from finishing your memoir and what steps you can take to overcome that. On this call, if you see the value of working together, we can talk about the logistics and the details of how that would work. I'll answer every single question you have about Memoir to Legacy. If we decide to work together, we'd begin immediately to get your memoir written and your story out to the world. And if we don't decide to work together, then that's totally okay too. But I do have some requirements for this call. I understand that this won't be for everyone. Most likely, this won't be for you if you don't think that you can learn to improve your writing. If you're afraid of what others will think if you reveal the truth about your experiences, or if you aren't willing to work to achieve your dream. I only accept a few new clients each year, and to assure your success, I need to know that you can work with simple internet tasks like Word documents and sending emails with attachments. These are just basic skills that make the process so much easier. And I need to know that you are an aspiring memoir writer with a burning passion to share your story with the world so others can learn and be inspired by your experience. I need to know that you're willing and that you can commit to spend about 5 hours a week on your memoir project for 20 weeks. And I need to know that you're open to learning new techniques and that you're dedicated to completing your memoir. Now, here's why I'm doing this. I'm offering these personal calls because first and foremost, I want to help you understand that you can successfully complete your memoir project. And I also want you to be able to use what I showed you today without struggle, without wasting time, and without wasting a lot of money. I want you to experience results right away. Here's what I want you to do next. And I want you to act fast, because every time I offer these personal calls, they book up quickly, and I only have a small amount of calls available in the next few days. Thanks so much for spending this time with me today. I look forward to learning more about your memoir, because the world needs the gift of your story.